There's something deeply unsettling and strangely powerful about realizing that the most important observer of your life is not some external figure. It's not society, not your friends, not your family, not even some higher power judging you from above. It's you, but not the version of you that's sitting here right now listening to this. Not the version tangled in distractions, excuses, and the hundred tiny compromises you've taught yourself to ignore. It's the version of you that doesn't exist yet, but is entirely dependent on the decisions you're making right now, your future self. We all like to imagine that future version of ourselves, more confident, more successful, more focused, living with clarity and purpose, but rarely do we stop to ask the only question that matters. What am I doing today that gives that version of me a real chance to exist? We love to romanticize the end result, the body, the lifestyle, the skills, the respect. But none of those things appear just because you want them badly enough. They are not rewards for ambition. They are consequences, built slowly and silently by choices made long before anyone sees the result. And here's the part most people never think about. Your future self doesn't get a say in the decisions you're making today. They only get to live with the consequences. That means when you skip that workout, when you avoid that uncomfortable task, when you choose to distract yourself instead of confronting your reality, you might feel like you're just pressing pause, like it's harmless, like you'll get back to it eventually. But what you're really doing is handing your future self a life they didn't ask for. They didn't ask for the anxiety you're avoiding now. They didn't ask for the debt you're racking up. They didn't ask for the health you're quietly neglecting or the regret you're setting in motion. You're choosing it for them every day, silently, rationalizing it in the moment and pushing the price out of you. And because the future always feels far away, it's easy to convince yourself it won't matter, that somehow later you will be stronger, wiser, more motivated. But here's the harsh truth. There is no later version of you that magically appears. There is only the person who emerges from what you consistently do right now. So imagine this. Imagine waking up 10 years from now. You look in the mirror, not with pride, but with frustration, and you realize you didn't run out of time. You ran out of excuses. And the person staring back at you knows it. They know you had the chance. They know you had the time. They know you had the awareness. And they know you chose something else instead. You chose distraction over discipline, comfort over clarity, familiarity over freedom. And now they're paying for it. But let's flip this, because this isn't meant to shame you. It's meant to wake you up. Because the same way you can hand your future self a life of regret, you can also hand them a life of momentum. You can give them strength. You can give them options. You can give them peace, not because life got easier, but because you trained yourself to face it. That starts with one decision: to live today as if the person you're becoming is real. Because they are. They're watching. And what you do next is the only thing that will ever matter to them. We often tell ourselves that putting something off is harmless, that skipping one workout, missing one study session, or spending one more night numbing ourselves with distractions won't matter in the long run. After all, what's the harm in one more day of comfort? But what we fail to recognize is that delay has a cost, and that cost is never paid immediately. It's forwarded to your future self like a bill with compound interest. You don't feel the damage right away, which is why the habit of postponing things is so easy to repeat. You think you're buying time, but really you're borrowing it, and the repayment always comes with more interest than you imagined. Most people are under the illusion that when the time is right, they'll suddenly become the kind of person who's focused, driven, and disciplined. They imagine their future self as some upgraded version of who they are now, someone with more willpower, more clarity, and more capacity to handle life. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That version of you does not just show up one day. It has to be built step by step in the present. If you're not practicing self-respect, self-discipline, and self-awareness now, those traits won't magically appear in a year. They don't grow in your imagination. They grow in repetition. Every day you wait, every moment you hesitate, you're choosing to build a future from avoidance. And avoidance doesn't build peace. It builds pressure. Let's make this practical. Say you want to learn a new skill, build a healthier body, or develop emotional resilience. That sounds great until it's time to actually do the work. That's when your brain starts negotiating. It tells you to rest now and try later, to gather more information, to wait for motivation. But you have to realize every time you give in to those internal negotiations, you're reinforcing the wrong identity. You're training yourself to associate goals with avoidance instead of effort. And over time, this creates a loop where the more you avoid, the more overwhelming the goal becomes until it feels impossible altogether. This is how you quietly sabotage your future, not in dramatic failures, but in subtle hesitations that become habits. And once a habit forms, it's no longer a decision, it's a system. You don't think, you just repeat. You wake up and distract yourself. You feel anxious and scroll. You feel tired and justify quitting. Not because you're weak, but because your habits were built to keep you comfortable, not capable. And here's the cost. The future doesn't care about your comfort today. It only lives with your decisions. Your future self is not a fantasy. They're a real person you're handing your life over to. And the version of you who wakes up 1 year from now will either feel prepared, focused, and grateful for the effort you made today, or they'll feel stuck, frustrated, and quietly angry that you didn't start when you had the chance. But here's the good news. The same way procrastination builds regret, action builds confidence. One small decision today, one act of discipline, can begin to shift your trajectory. Not because it fixes everything overnight, but because it interrupts the pattern. It sends a new message to your future. I'm on your side now. That's all it takes. Not perfection, not intensity, just momentum. And once that momentum begins, your identity starts to shift. Not because of who you say you want to be, but because of who you prove you are, through your actions. Whether you realize it or not, you're making an agreement with your future self right now. Not through your words, but through your habits. Every repeated action, every time you choose distraction over discipline, ease over effort, comfort over clarity, you're shaping the conditions of a life someone else will have to live. And that someone else is still you. The only difference is they won't have the luxury of pretending it doesn't matter. They'll feel the full weight of everything you've done or failed to do. We tend to separate our present from our future as if they belong to different people. We treat the present like a place to indulge. We treat the future like a place to recover. But these aren't two lives. This is one life, unfolding in slow motion. And every choice is a thread in the fabric of your becoming. It's easy to convince yourself that small things don't matter. Skipping one workout, breaking one promise to yourself, spending one more night mindlessly scrolling through your phone. But if you repeated that small compromise every day for a year, what kind of life would it build? Now flip it. What if instead of treating these small moments as throwaways, you treated them as sacred? What if you stopped asking, what's the harm in this? And started asking, what does this create? Because that's the real question. What life are your choices creating? You are not waiting to become someone. You are becoming someone right now. And the more you act without intention, the more you risk becoming a stranger to yourself. Because regret doesn't show up like a thief. It shows up like a mirror. And the scariest thing is when you finally see who you are and realize it wasn't an accident. This is how most people end up lost. Not because they didn't try, but because they didn't act with consistency. They mistook motivation for commitment. They mistook planning for progress. They mistook good intentions for action. Your future self doesn't care about your plans. They care about what you actually did. They care about the hours you practiced, the reps you pushed through, the uncomfortable truths you faced, the limits you challenged, not once, but consistently. Discipline isn't about self-denial. It's about self-respect. It's not about controlling every variable in your life. It's about refusing to betray yourself when no one's watching. And right now, no one is. No audience, no applause, just you and the opportunity to build something that lasts. So the question is simple. When your future self finally meets you, will they thank you or forgive you? The biggest myth people believe about transformation is that it happens in a moment, that some future version of themselves will be born out of a breakthrough, a revelation, a sudden surge of motivation. But in reality, identity isn't built during breakthroughs. It's built in silence. It's built during the early mornings when you wake up and do the work even though no one is watching. It's built when you stick to the plan on the days when your mind screams for comfort. It's built every time you keep a promise to yourself when it would be easier to rationalize breaking it. This is the part of change no one talks about. There's no celebration, no recognition, no instant reward, just you, facing your own resistance and deciding not to give in. And here's where most people quit, not because they're weak, but because they were expecting something louder, something more dramatic. They thought success would feel more exciting, more cinematic, more validating. Instead, it feels like repetition. It feels like choosing the same hard thing over and over again without applause. But that's exactly why it works. Because repetition is the language of the brain. It doesn't believe what you say. It believes what you do, consistently. Every time you follow through on a hard thing, you're not just moving forward, you're rewiring your mind. You're teaching yourself that you are the kind of person who doesn't retreat when things get uncomfortable. You're proving that discipline isn't a performance, it's a standard. And the longer you keep that standard alive, the less motivation you need to rely on, because discipline becomes your baseline. This is what people miss when they chase motivation. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. Motivation depends on your mood. Discipline depends on your values. So when you stop waiting to feel ready and start acting in alignment with who you want to become, something shifts. The question stops being, do I feel like doing this? And becomes, would my future self benefit if I did this anyway? That's how your actions become aligned with your mission. You stop living for the moment. You start living with the moment in service to your future, and slowly your decisions begin to reflect something deeper than impulse. They begin to reflect intention, not the fleeting kind, the grounded kind, the kind that says, I'm no longer negotiating with myself. I've made the decision, and now I'm following through. That is how confidence is built, not by shouting affirmations into a mirror, but by following through on the things you said you'd do long after the mood you said them in has passed. It's not sexy, it's not fast, but it's real. And when your future self finally steps into the life you've built, they won't have to fight against your past. They'll be able to thank you for it.